Hello everyone, this is Direwolf20 and welcome to part 3 of Direwolf20's Mod Spotlight, taking a look at Just Dire Things. Today we're going to cover all the machines in Just Dire Things. So this is going to be this set of machines. There's, I don't know, a bunch of them. There's probably going to be more coming at some point. But yeah, and then I want to also mention one or two other little additions and tweaks in addition to last episode where, or the last two Spotlight episodes, where one or two things have changed since I've recorded them, and I wanted to fix one or two bugs that a couple people called out. So let's get started looking at one or two little minor additions, and then we'll look at all the machines available for automation in Just Dire Things. So first thing I want to call out, everybody, or a few people called out that the fuel canister was using 2 fuel per smelt. That wasn't a bug with the fuel canister, that was a bug with my Blazegold. My raw ores were set to use 2 fuel by mistake in the recipe for them. So it does in fact only use 1 fuel for the fuel canister. My bad. So the other thing I want to show you is a new ability that I added to the Blazegold tools. All Blazegold tools have the ability to repair themselves in lava. I decided that the first tier of tools should break relatively easily. The second tier of tools should be able to survive for a while as long as you're diligent. And then tiers 3 and 4 obviously have forge energy, so they will never break. So repairing these tools is really not hard at all. All you need to do is go find a source of lava and drop your tool in there. And then the tool will absorb all the lava and be fully repaired. Pretty cool. In addition, all swords now have a new ability that has been added called Cauterize Wounds. Simply right-click your sword, and it'll heal you for just a few hearts. Currently set to 3, debating if I want to balance that a little bit better, but we'll see. You'll notice the sword also goes on about a 10-second cooldown, during which you will not be able to access it. You do have a little bit of durability damage on that guy, and then if you're using a powered sword, obviously it'll use up a little bit of power. You'll notice that it also used the scanning ability at the same time, because they are both right-click abilities. It's up to you to decide if you want to toggle one or two of those off, so that it can only use one or the other at a time. One quick note, because of the way cooldowns work in Minecraft, you can't open the UI while the item is on cooldown. That's something I'll look to figure out how to fix, but it's just kind of how vanilla Minecraft works. So we'll see if I can fix that. And finally, I've gone into the Nether to help demonstrate a new item that has been recently added since the last Spotlight, and that is the Totem of Death Recall. So in order to make this, you're going to need to get yourself some Blazegold ingots, so a visit to the Nether is required before you have access to this item, and it is a one-time use item. You can possibly guess what this does, but, you know, in case you can't, I'll show you. Oh no, I died! That's okay. I have the Totem of Death Recall. Simply hold right-click, and you'll teleport right back to your death point. Make sure you didn't die in the void or potentially in lava. You know, up to you to make sure you're teleporting back to a safe space. You'll notice the Totem of Death Recall is consumed on use, so it's a one-time use. If you want to teleport again, you're going to have to make another one of those guys. So, you know. Now, we handily cleaned out our inventory, courtesy of dying in the Nether on some lava. So let's go ahead and demonstrate some of the cool things that there are to check out, block and automation wise. So the first set of blocks, you'll notice some of these blocks look pretty similar to each other with slightly different color schemes. The gist of the rule set here is that most blocks have 2 tiers to them, a simple tier and a more advanced tier. Now, some of the changes will be coming soon that will change the color of these blocks, and there's going to be a couple other little tweaks and changes. So some of the more recent blocks that I added have some temporary textures, but they'll be getting upgraded shortly. In general, the tier 1 blocks do not require power, but do a very simple and basic form of things. And the tier 2 version of the blocks are way more advanced, but require RF, or forge energy, to run. So, with that said, let's start demonstrating this by taking a look at the simple block breaker, followed by the advanced block breaker. So the simple block breaker is a ferrocore level tool. It requires no energy. It has a facing direction that you can rotate by using the ferrocore wrench. And as you can see, just shift right clicking around it will go ahead and change the direction it's facing. Now the simple block breaker is, as indicated, pretty simple. It will allow you to break blocks using whatever tool you give it. And for example, if I were to give it a wooden pickaxe and place some cobblestone in front of it, it will slowly start breaking it and then eventually break the item. It will also cause durability damage to the tool, so pay attention to that. Okay, obviously giving it a better tool will give it a better breaking experience. It will also use any enchants. So for example, if we were to grab Silk Touch and place it on here with an anvil, you'll notice that it's going to pick up any stone. Whereas without Silk Touch, it wouldn't have done that. A couple things to note, we do have the redstone control, so by default it's set to ignored. You can set it to low or high, so in high mode, obviously, it's going to require a redstone signal to run. And in pulse mode, it'll run once per pulse. Finally, this is the speed and ticks in which the block breaker will attempt to run. By default, it's set to every 20 ticks, which means once a second, it'll check for a block and then try to break it. This is generally fast enough. If you're going to be playing on a server, it's recommended that, you try not to go too crazy with it. But you could absolutely lower it down to 1. By the way, for pack authors and mod pack makers and for server owners, you can config the lowest level that players are allowed to set this to. So if you feel like running too much, once per tick is too fast, you can make the minimum 20 or 10 or 5 or whatever you want to make it. Notice also that the block breaker does require having a pick in the inventory for it to work. Other things to note is that all the tool abilities in Just Dire Things will work from within this block. So for example, if I were to throw a Blazegold one in there, and we take a look at the list of tools, you'll see Auto Smelter and Hammer Mode is on there. So if I were to, for example, do something like this, and toss the Blazegold pick in there, not only will it break in the Hammer Mode, but it also smelted all the blocks. It did use the appropriate amount of durability. Note for the hammer here that it's, dependent on what direction the block is facing. So for example, if we did something like this, and we put the blocks in this direction, it's going to break them in the up direction. Hammer mode worked in a 3x3 facing up, just like if the player were facing up. And if you faced it down and gave it, for example, a shovel, the Blazegold pick went ahead and just broke that one, so that might not be a great example, but you get the idea. Now, if you want to pick up the items, use the item collector that I demonstrated for you previously. Ta-da! Facing down. So the facing direction of the block is important not only for which block it's going to break, but obviously, if the tool has any kind of hammer ability, it's going to be dependent on the side of the block that it breaks. My personal thing for playing Minecraft for as long as I have, I've seen many block breakers. Some of them require some power, some of them don't require power. Some of them can do some simple things, some of them can't do some simple things. I personally was of the opinion that if all you want to do is break a simple block, that shouldn't require power, Forge Energy, but it should require using the appropriate tool, and it should take the time that it would take for a player to break. Obviously, if you put efficiency or any other speed upgrades on these things, those will apply as well. And all the other tool abilities will work. So if you throw an Eclipse Alloy pickaxe in there with Instant Mine on there, it'll instantly mine. Now, the advanced block breaker is a little bit different. Let's take a look at that bad boy. Now, this thing is going to be a little bit more complex. So while the UI may look intimidating, I promise you it's not that hard. So first off, make sure to give it some power like I already have with a creative energy cube. And then let's take a look at the top section, which should look familiar if you remember the last ModSpotlight. This is where you can go ahead and see what area it's going to affect. So the advanced block breaker will break any blocks in the given area. So I'm going to go ahead and move my X position over here, and then we will just give the X, Y, and Z a little bit more space. Just like with the first tier, you're going to need to go ahead and get yourself a nice old pickaxe or any kind of tool to use. You could use a shovel, you could use whatever you want. And what's going to happen is the advanced block breaker will try to break a block within the area of effect once every speed of ticks. So if we put a bunch of blocks in there, it's going to try once a second to break those blocks. And the same with the whole pulse mode here, for example. And the high mode would only run when it's receiving a redstone signal. Low would only run when it's not. And in pulse mode, it will break all the blocks in the area of effect when it receives a pulse. So for example, we do something like that, and we pulse it, you'll see that it breaks all the blocks. Pretty cool. And once again, just to prove that this is pulse mode, you pulse it, and it's going to break everything in that area of effect all at once. Cool. Okay, so with that said, I'll put this back in ignored mode. Next up is the direction from which it is breaking. This generally won't matter with most vanilla tools. However, if you're using a tool that has some kind of hammer ability, you are going to want to pay attention to the direction. So for example, it's currently set to down, which means the player is facing down when they break a block. So if I put some blocks in there, you'll see it kind of does like a nice AoE depending on which block it happens to hit there. So it hit that one. Okay. Now if we set this to, for example, let's see if I did something like this, happen to hit the middle one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set you to pulse mode again. Okay. And then when we pulse you, see how it hit the middle one and it like broke those three because it was facing down? Now, if we did something similar and put you on north mode, it's facing, let's put it on west mode. So like pretend the player's facing west. There, it only needed to do one break because it hit that one and it's just like I hit that and it did the hammer mode. So the facing direction, you get to specify which side of the block the player breaks from. Again, if you're not using a hammer, that generally won't matter too much, but you know, you do you. And all tool abilities like teleport and instant break and all that good stuff will work with this. So, you know, if you do have a higher tier tool, you can go ahead and use it. Now, here's another really cool feature, which I'm semi-proud of here. If I were to put away this guy and we got a, let's get a tier 3 pickaxe, okay? So that would be Celestigem. And I'm going to go ahead and bind it to the chest here. And you can see it's now bound to the overworld at that position. Advanced Block Breaker, because it has an internal battery, will charge any tools you place in it. So no need to worry about pulling the tool out and charging it and putting it back in. It's fine. The Advanced Block Breaker will charge it using its internal buffer. And maybe a better demonstration here would be to do that without a creative inventory attached. So now you'll see that when we do that, it drains some energy, exactly 10,000, to fill up the buffer that is in the Celestigem. Cool? Good deal. And now the Celestigem pickaxe, when it mines any tools or blocks, we'll go ahead and teleport them directly into the chest using the ability on the tool. Okay. The only other thing to talk about here is the filter slots. So the filter slots are pretty straightforward. By default, you're in block mode, which means I will break the blocks in the filter. Okay, so I'm going to now set this to an allow list, and I will go ahead and let's turn off smelter mode here, just as a nice demonstration. And let's also turn off hammer mode because we don't want any confusion. Okay, so we'll go ahead and place that tool back in there. And now it's also going to follow the rules of what I just turned off, so it won't smelt and it won't hammer. So by default, it's in block mode, which means if I whitelist cobblestone and place this and this and set you to ignored, he's only going to break cobblestone. Cool. Okay. Now, if I put you in item mode, he's allowed to break the stone, because when you break stone with a pickaxe, it turns into cobblestone. So you get to specify whether you care about the whitelisting or the allow listing for what block you're breaking, or you can specify which item you get from the drops. So for example, if you were looking at doing like amethyst, you could put amethyst shards in the whitelist. And by the way, yes, you can drag. So if you're not in creative mode, you can just click and drag into your list here, right? So now amethyst shards should work. So if I got myself one of these dudes and placed it right here, and we gave ourselves that nice random tick speed again, which I think budding amethyst is a tick speed. It's not a tile entity, right? I don't know. Well, what we could do is we could do tick rate. I think the default is 20. So let's make it 600. Notice how it's automatically breaking the amethyst shards, because once the amethyst buds grow large enough that they'll drop a shard, that's when it detects I'm allowed to break it. Okay? So let's set this back to 20 again, and set this back to 3. There you go. So that's how the advanced block breaker works. You set the area you want to break in, you give it the appropriate tool, you can tell it what direction to break from, you can also tell it the speed and ticks. So by default, it'll scan, once every 20 ticks and break a block once every 20 ticks. I will set you back to denialist. It'll be 1, 2. If I set that to 1 tick, see, it's much faster. And as promised, all drops teleported to the chest. Or you could use an item collector if you don't have a tier 3 pick yet. Another thing to note, most blocks in Just Dire Things will retain their configuration when you break them. Again, they do not retain their inventory, but they will retain their filter slots. So if I break this block right now, you'll notice he dropped the pickaxe in the world. But if I move this up here, well, that was supposed to save. Well, I guess I just found a bug I need to go look into. But that was supposed to save all those settings. Let's see what happens with the next one. And the next one being the Simple Placer. As you can probably guess, the Simple Placer places blocks in the world. There's a small little thing here. You get the same directionality to it, and also the tick speed and the standard control of redstone signaling. So if you just place blocks in there, boom, place them in the world. Easy peasy. And you can also, of course, speed it up or slow it down. And again, it's only going to check every 51 ticks. So if you happen to, you know, break the block right near the end of that 20 tick window, it'll go ahead and do it. The other thing here is what direction it's placing it from. So for example, if it's placing it down, it's going to do something like that. Up. North. And if I did something like this, that might help. South. West. So it's placing it on the west side of the block. Like, so like as if, you know, it's a little bit confusing. I might wind up reversing these because I think I reversed them in other things, but I might have forgotten to reverse it in this. But the gist is the directionality here tells you what direction it's trying to place from. There you go. So like up would be placing on the top face of the block. So this one might need a little bit of tweaking, but you get the idea of what it's going for. There might be a few little bugs in it I have to work out. So that's the simple block placer. It places blocks. Now for the advanced block placer. This one's a little bit more advanced. So as you can see here, similar UI to the breaker. Again, you need power to place, and you can specify where the placing will take place. So again, I'm going to push this guy out off in this direction, and I'm going to go something like Y level down 1, and we'll just make the X and the Z larger. Cool? So if I give this thing a bunch of cobblestone, it's going to place 1 cobblestone every 20 ticks. If I speed that up, it'll be a little bit quicker. Cool? So let's put you in 3x3 mode. Easy peasy. Okay? If we do that, it'll do that. And I'm pretty sure this one, when it's in pulse mode, it only places 1 block per pulse. So let's validate that. I don't think it fills the area for this one. I think that's the way I wanted it to be. Let's see. I'm just going to do... Oh. No, it does fill the area for a pulse. I lied. I remember I was going back and forth on how I wanted that to work. Now, the facing thing is the same deal as before. So, for example, if we put that on the... What direction was that again? West. So we do a west face. And then we give this guy torches. It'll place on the west face of any blocks. Or at least it should be. Again, it might be a little bit weird. I'm going to have to validate that that's working correctly. Because clearly it's not. I did just change how directionality works in these blocks, so clearly I broke something. But the gist is supposed to be, it only, you know, it'll place from that direction. And finally, let's talk about the filter slots. So what these do is they filter which blocks the block placer is allowed to place on. So by default, it's empty, means it can place anywhere inside the area. Let's replace this block, and this block with cobblestone, and then tell this dude you're allowed to place on cobblestone with an allow list. Now, anytime it tries to place, it's going to look for cobblestone below the block because it's in down. Cool. And that's the only blocks it's allowed to place on. Sweet. Okay, that works. Now this is the west direction. So like, let's not use dirt. That's already there. Let's use cobblestone here. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to the west direction. Now you'll notice it's placing on those guys, because there's cobblestone on the west face. Got it? Okay. If we did south direction, and change this button here to south, it would only place on the south face. Cool? Now let's see if I'm telling the truth about this thing. Remember its settings when you break it and pick it up. Oh yeah, look at that! Haha. Sweet. That's what's supposed to happen. Clearly there's a bug with the other thing. So we do that, and then we break this guy and pick him back up. And it's got all the stuff. Couple notes about this mechanic of breaking and picking up. If you were to break it and then craft it by itself, it'll clear the NBT so that it can stack with others. And if you don't make any changes to it, it's supposed to remember that you haven't made any changes, and it'll automatically stack. So if you just place and change nothing, it'll stack with others in your inventory. If you place and make any changes to the UI, it'll no longer stack. And then you have to clear the NBT tag. Now let's talk about the clickers. The simple clicker is, as you might expect, very similar to the placer and the breaker. Does not require any power, only affects the block in front of it, can be rotated using the ferrocore wrench. Okay? And what this does, it will either left or right click whatever you give it on the block in front of it. And you can filter on a whole bunch of stuff in Tier 2. But in Tier 1, you can at least tell it what to click on, or try to click on for that matter. Now, there's a whole lot going on in this UI, so we might spend the rest of the episode talking about the clickers, and then we're going to have a part 4. That's what I think is going to happen, because we have a lot more blocks to look at. So, let's talk about the clicker, and then we'll move on. So, same standard controls of this guy. This tells you what side you're clicking from. So, you can visualize this by turning on Show Fake Player in this block. And for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to target air, and you'll kind of see particles. So it's like going down. So because down, imagine you're a fake player and you're looking down. If you wanted to look, for example, west, you would change the direction to west. See? And it's like the player was here and they were clicking in this direction. Okay? If you did up, it would be like it was there and clicking up. Got it? And there's a bunch of different things you can click on. You can either click on blocks, air, hostile, passive, adult, child, player, all living, and that's about it. Back to blocks. And you can either right-click, left-click, or hold-click, and you can specify the number of ticks to hold for before you release. Whew, that's a lot. Also, you can toggle on and off sneak clicking if you want to do that. So let's look at some examples of things you would do here, right? So maybe you want to click on a block, right? And if you want to right-click a block, an example might be a shovel. If you've got a piece of dirt in front of this thing, and it doesn't really matter what direction you're facing when you click on it. If you put dirt there, it's going to right-click and turn it into a path. Pretty cool. That's right-clicking dirt. Now, potentially, you want to right-click air. A good example of right-clicking air might be if you gave it a bucket. Aha! Notice it didn't pick it up. Why didn't it pick it up? Because it's no longer air. If you want to pick it up, you got to go back to block mode. Got it? And now it's not clicking it again. Why ain't it clicking it again? Because it's not a block there. It needs to click on air. So this mode between block and air specifies when it's going to click. If you want it to click on a block, it needs to be in block mode. If you want it to click on air, it needs to be in air mode. And obviously we are right-clicking there. Okay. Now let's get some fences because you know what's next. Entities. So we can go ahead and boop, 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 and maybe one more for back here. Okay. Cool. Hello, entity. If I had something to move you yet, I would probably do something about that. So anyway, fake player here is still showing. Let's see what happens when we try to right-click passive mobs. So for example, we might place a sheep there, and that sheep we want to right-click. And what do we want to right-click the sheep with? Well, if you guessed we're going to give this thing shears, you guessed very accurately. Haha! Click the sheep with shears. Well done. Notice, obviously, by the way, the shears took damage because, yeah, that's how shears work. Now you can also target passive. You can target adults only, or children only, or players only, right? Or all living entities, which means anything that's alive, passive, hostile, whatever. Okay. Now, in addition to this, we could instead left-click. So maybe I want to give you that Eclipse Alloy sword, and just like we promised, We now bind. And let's enable the abilities so that teleport is on. And your job now will be to left click. Haha! Where does drops go? Right into the chest, because teleport drops was on. It will use the durability. It does not charge it because this is a tier 1 clicker, not a tier 2 clicker. Tier 2 clickers have power, and they will charge your tools for you. If you want to target adults, you want to target, whatever mobs you want to target and what types. So if you want to target only hostile mobs, you could do that. And then obviously it wouldn't affect sheep, but it would affect zombies. See? No harming of the sheep. But if we put a zombie there... Aha. I guess he didn't drop anything. Oh, he did. Maybe he died from the... Or is this turned off? No, he probably just died from the sunlight. Whatever. But you get the idea. Cool. And then finally, there's the holding right click. So an example of that might be if you had, I don't know, a trident. That would be cool. So if we said, hey, get a trident in there. Now, I'm going to warn you, do not expect the return enchant thing to work. It doesn't. Because, yeah, it's going to return to a fake entity that doesn't really exist. But obviously, let's say like on air, for example. So don't target anything, just target whatever. So there, it's trying to do something, but right-clicking a trident does nothing. What you need to do is hold right-click, but you need to hold it for longer than 1 tick. So let's do like 11 ticks. Oh, hello. There we go. That worked. So 11 ticks is about half a second. So there we go, exactly half a second. Put your trident in there, and boom. So up to you how you use that. And obviously you can specify to sneak with the player. A good example of that might be the tanks, I want to say, from Mechanism. Let's see, if I put the tank in there and we put you on bucket mode, is that right? If you're sneaking on blocks, facing down, don't sneak. Oh, there we go. Yeah, see? Versus sneak on air. Cool? Cool. Good deal. At this point, I can only assume you're sensing a pattern, and you would probably be accurate. The advanced clicker, aka the tier 2 version of the clicker, can do things in a much larger area of effect. So let's do our standard approach of just going over here. And you know what? I think I'm going to set up a little mob farm. So, boom, 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 boom. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit bigger on the X and the Z, but we make sure we capture everything in there. So the advanced clicker will click things in an area of effect. You can also filter. Let's talk about it all. So, for example, if you wanted to click on blocks, you could click on blocks. If you wanted to click on air, you could do that. And you can also show fake player, and you'll see where the fake player is clicking. So in blocks mode, it's going to try and click on whatever air blocks it can, and it does so once every whatever speed it ticks you have. So if you make it 1, it'll try to click, every tick on whatever air block, and it'll kind of iterate through them all. So you can see it's like trying to click on that air block, and then that air block, and then that air block, and it's doing a whole bunch. But if we slow it down a little bit, it'll do it a little bit slower. So same mechanics as before with the clicking on blocks thing. You can give it the shovel, yada yada. You can, filter the list. You can say whatever you want. You can sneak click. You can right click, yada yada. More likely than not, you will probably be using the advanced clicker to do things like, I don't know, shear sheep. That sounds like a good idea. So let's get some sheep in there, okay? I'm going to throw down 1, 2 of those dudes. And let's change this mode into target passive and give it some shears. Boom, boom. So now what it's doing is it's looking for any passive mobs in that area of effect, and it's going to try to right-click on them, given the tool that it has. Doesn't have to be a tool, though. Could be like, I don't know, wheat. There you go. Okay, cool. Hey, you know what? I really want that baby sheep to grow up fast. Let's target child. So now, should be feeding that child. Do note that sometimes clicking on the entity is a little bit tricky. So you might need to change the direction from which it's trying to click, especially if they're like really small entities. But, you'll get the idea. There we go. Now it's clicking. Oh yeah, look at that growing time. It's definitely force feeding that poor sheep. Sweet. Now you might you know, potentially want to do a little bit of a farm thing. So maybe we would left click and maybe adults only. So maybe what we'll do, oh, that's all entities. Oh well, you get the idea. Nice. And as usual, let's see. So that should have done the drops teleporter. Not quite sure why it didn't, but meh. Like I said, still in beta. This is still a beta version. Oh look, there we go. Now it went. Right? Yeah, no, those are new drops. I should probably throw a gate here for demonstration purposes. There you go. And the drops totally went in there. Nice. Okay, so you get the idea. So you can target, you know, pretty much whatever you want. And again, fortune would work. So if you had like looting on your sword and you set up a mob farm, you could target hostile for that. Now for the list, you can actually drag from JEI any spawn eggs. Right? So if we said, hey, only do, I don't know, how about pig? That sounds cool. Okay. And then we gave ourselves some pigs and some sheep. Right? So allow list, passive. And give the sword. Boom. There you go. And remember, the fake player kind of does his best. So, yeah, I think I might know what might be causing that now that I'm looking at it a little bit closer. But you can see here it's not trying to kill any sheep. But as soon as I put a pig in there, for entities, I usually find like I think it's down is kind of the best. Because then it's in like the center of the entity and it goes downwards. Whereas if you were like on the north side and you swung from here, you could totally hit a sheep. So keep that in mind. And the same deal with redstone control. All that stuff is pretty standard. You know, the same thing with hold right click, shift click, all that stuff. So everything you saw on the tier 1 clicker, just in area of effect form. Nice for mob farms, nice for breeding animals. And then I think what we're going to do is probably wrap up the spotlight here. Let's see if you save your settings. Hope so. Yeah, you did. Good job. So we're going to wrap up the spotlight here and come back for part 2, where we're going to see just a few more blocks from Just Dire Things. Because there's a lot more to show, actually, and we're pretty much at wrapping up point for this. So this one actually took a little longer than I thought. All right, so a part 4 of Just Dire Things Mod Spotlight will be coming at you soon. For now, Doll20 signing off. Hope you guys enjoyed this Mod Spotlight. Couple minor bugs I found while running through this, but that's okay. We'll fix them up, and that's why it's still in beta. All right, for now, take it easy.